Hello YouTube and welcome to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today I will have a look at the version 5.7 banner lineup, talk about the two new characters Skirk and Dahlia, and will give you my pull priority list for your F2P account, so make sure to stick around till the end. The version 5.7 livestream just dropped and introduced a bunch of interesting things, one of which is apparently a new endgame mode. The video will follow shortly. About the banner lineup, in the first half of version 5.7, Skirk will finally be released alongside a new 4-star character from Mondstadt, Dahlia, and Shenhe. Yes, Shenhe is getting her next rerun already, and it has not even been 2 years since her last banner. Crazy, but let me talk about her later. Let's start with Skirk's kit. Skirk is going to be a 5-star cryo DPS who wields a sword as her weapon of choice. But what sounds rather simple at first is actually pretty unique and kinda complex. The first thing we need to talk about is her special energy. Skirk does not require energy recharge, but an alternative called Serpent Subtlety. This mechanic is similar to Mavuika's fighting spirit, but don't worry, you won't need Nutland characters in this case. I will talk about the details shortly, but let's start out with her normal attacks. Skirk will perform up to 5 normal attacks in a row to deal damage to nearby opponents. So far, so good. Her elemental skill is where things get more interesting. Depending whether you want to tap or hold her skill, her entire playstyle changes. This way, you can decide whether you want to run her as a normal attacking on-field DPS or a burst sub-DPS. This dual mode is also represented in her signature artifact set Finale of the Deep Gallery, as it will either buff your normal attacks or your burst damage, but not both at the same time. When you tap her E, Skirk will gain 45 Serpent Subtlety and enter her enhanced state, allowing her to deal big numbers of damage with her normal attacks. She will stay in this state until she consumes all of her Serpent Subtlety points, which is her DPS window. Also, in her on-field normal attack playstyle, she will still have a burst that will buff your damage a bit more, called the Withering effect, but the burst itself will not deal any damage. If you hold her skill instead, Skirk will still gain 45 Serpent Subtlety points and move/float fast over the battlefield. In this case, your damage will come from her burst nuke, which brings us to her ultimate ability. As I said already, Skirk's burst does not require energy, but 50 Serpent Subtlety points. However, similar to Mavuika, she can have more than 50 points, and the more she has, the bigger her burst damage gets. You get 45 points from her skill, so how do you max out her Serpent Subtlety points? Well, from her passive talent. Whenever you trigger a cryo reaction other than melt, you will get a Phantom Rift on field, and up to 3 can exist at the same time. When you now perform a charge attack, her special Withering Burst, or hold her skill, you will absorb these rifts and gain Serpent Subtlety, which should make it rather easy in practice to max out your points. Either you want to play Skirk with off-field damage dealers like Yelan, Farina or Escoffier, or when you use her as a burst sub-DPS, even with another damage dealer like Ayaka or Niviette. This way, you should have 3 rifts available all the time to max out your damage. Now, I only mentioned Hydra or Cryo characters as potential teammates for her. Is there a reason for that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Yes, there is. Her second and third passive basically force you to play Skirk exclusively in freeze teams, meaning only Hydra and Cryo characters are allowed. Why? Well, for every other Hydra or Cryo unit than herself, Skirk will get extra damage multipliers, similar to Niviette, but he gets it when he runs different elements in the party. And for Skirk, the gap between having 2 or 3 stacks is absurdly high, so it's basically always better to run Hydro and Cryo only. And when I say always, I mean always. According to calculations made by theory crafters, even a C2 Xylonen would be worse than a Barbara or Mika. So yeah, cool. As if that wasn't enough, her third passive also will increase the skill talent level of all party members by 1 when you only run Hydro and Cryo units. So units like herself, Farina and Escoffier really will perform extremely well with her. So let's summarize for now. Skirk will probably be a very strong damage dealer as long as she's played in freeze teams. If you have Escoffier, she will synergize perfectly with her, as both have the same requirements for the max damage and rest shred. However, this also means that not having the Fontaine Chef girl is gonna result in a significant damage loss, and you will not be able to make up for it with other rest shred units like Kazuha or Xylonen because of Skirk's passive talents. When it comes to her build, I expect her artifact set Finale of the Deep Gallery to be her general best in slot, but if you run her with Farina, Marchese Hunter is more or less equally good. I will make a short and maybe even a video on how to build her soon, so make sure to subscribe to not miss anything. Overall, Skirk feels like she's going to be a very strong niche DPS, but not necessarily the best option for newer players who are looking for versatility. Let's talk about Dahlia next. Dahlia is a Hydro 4-star character from Mondstadt and also uses a sword as a weapon. His normal attacks are kinda irrelevant. His skill will summon a Misty Trace that will either explode and deal Hydro damage if an enemy touches it, or lift you up in the air if you touch it with a party member, similar to Albedo's Flower. His burst will do some damage and give your active character a shield. I don't expect the shield to be anything crazy, but you can refresh it when dealing normal attacks, so if you want to run Dahlia with Skirk, you're good to go. Also, the active character's attack speed is increased based on the same stat the shield is scaling on. I expect it to be HP and probably Dahlia's constellations. In practice, I'm not sure how useful this attack speed buff is going to be, because in the past it didn't leave too big of an impact. His Hydro application seems minimal, and since he is from Mondstadt, he does not have access to the hero set, which makes his kit kinda underwhelming. He is a support option for Skirk teams because he is Hydro and enables the Nuttlen event sword for Skirk because he grants a shield. However, he is definitely not a necessity, so if you end up getting him, consider him a bonus, but not more. Now let's move on to the rerun characters of version 5.7. It's time to talk about Shenhe. She is a niche cryopolar support, but became relevant again with the release of Escoffier and now Skirk. Shenhe is one of the best supports for Skirk, however, having Escoffier and Farina is far more important than her, and other units like Sidlali, Yelan or even Xingqiu are good to decent alternatives, so don't feel forced to get Shenhe for Skirk. Also, it wouldn't surprise me if Hoyo would release another Hydro/Cryo unit in the near future that synergizes well with freeze teams once again, but that's just speculation. With all that said, Shenhe is still one of Ayaka's best teammates as well, so if she is your main and you just rediscovered her on your account after pulling Escoffier, you won't go wrong with Shenhe. Though, similar to Emilie, I don't think Shenhe will leave too big of an impact in the sense that she won't get any better than what she is right now. Also, the fact that she got her next rerun already is a bit suspicious to me. Hoyo tends to rerun older units before they release a new character with a similar skill set. Kazuha got an unexpected rerun right before Xylonen was released, Xylonen got a rerun right before Escoffier was released, so I'm not sure what that means for Shenhe, but just be aware of the possibility that Hoyo has another unit up their sleeve. If you do not want Shenhe for either Ayaka or Skirk, I would not recommend her for meta. Personally, I do not have her on my account, and with Escoffier and Farina, my Ayaka could still clear Abyss without any issues. So, first half of version 5.7 is covered, let's move on to the second half. Here we will be getting reruns of the Pyro Archon Mavuika and Emilie. First up, let's take a look at Mavuika. In case you have been sleeping under a rock since 5.3 or just started playing the game, the Pyro Archon is the most broken DPS in Genshin. No other unit hits as hard as she does, and it is not even close. Also, she can work as a burst sub DPS as well. She also does not require energy recharge, but fighting spirits. She gets these when party members consume Night Soul points, so you need Nuttlen units in your team. Back in 5.3, you basically needed Sidlali and ideally Xylonen, but by now Janssen is a very powerful 4-star option for her, so while I would not necessarily call her super F2P friendly, she can run Bennett and Janssen as 4-stars without damage loss. However, for her best performance and biggest nuke numbers, Citlali still is a massive buff and close to a must for her. However, unlike Skirk, Mavuika can be played in pretty much any team core, whether it's Melt, Vape, Overload, Burning or Monopyro. Of course, Melt will remain by far her best option, but that's due to the high Melt multipliers and not because of restriction that's built into her kit. With the Obsidian Codex artifact set, she has an efficient domain to farm and is rather easy to build. For exploration, she is amazing in Nutland and still pretty dang good outside of it. If you pair her DPS numbers with her flexibility in terms of sub DPS, she is one of the most valuable characters in the game. Also, Hoyo increased the HP points in Abyss, and if you are struggling with endgame content, she might be the solution. Of course, there will always be the next strong DPS at some point in time, but in terms of DPS numbers, she has not been power crept yet and probably won't be too soon because the devs simply overtuned her a bit and cannot release the next one right away without ruining the game's balancing. So for now, her value will stay the same. Emilie will finally rerun in version 5.7, almost 1 year after her release in 4.8. Emilie is a Dendropolar and works best as a sub DPS in burning teams. She is Kinich's best teammate, and all of you who just got him on his first ever rerun might want Emilie as well. Her skill and burst deal good damage, and her kit also protects you from burning damage to your own party members. If you play Nahida instead, you will notice the difference as you will take damage from the burning reaction yourself. With that all said, Emilie's value outside of Kinich teams turned out to be worse than I initially expected in 4.8. While she works in Mualani Vape teams as well, her overall team flexibility is not the best, and there are no dedicated pyro units for burning either. Since we are about to leave the Pyro Nation, I do not expect Emilie to remain a high tier sub DPS for too much longer. She didn't leave the biggest impact during the Nutland patches, and I doubt that burning is gonna be meta unless Hoyo keeps giving us the Papilla in Spiral Abyss. Overall, I would only pull for Emilie if you like her as a character or you are big enough of a Kniech fan. For general meta, I think her best days are already behind her, and to be fair, the Papilla will probably have less Abyss appearances once we enter Not Cry. So, I've covered every character for version 5.7, which means it is now time for my pull priority list. In the first spot, I have to give this one to Mavuika. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of her bike, her damage output at C0R0 is just too good to be ignored. Plus, with the release of Yansan, she got another more F2P friendly 4-star option for her best teams. You can also use her as a burst sub DPS if you want, so if you don't have her on your account, I'd strongly recommend you to at least consider her. In the second spot, we have Skirk. The new Cryo Queen is not out yet, so it is hard to tell how strong she is gonna be, but I'm pretty sure that she is not power creeping Mavuika. If you have her elite supports, meaning Escoffier and Farina, she will probably perform very well, but she is far more limited when it comes to team building than Mavuika, so with the information we have right now, she is number 2 on the list. The third spot goes to Emilie. As I said, she is a good unit, but limited to a rather underwhelming reaction, which is burning. If you like her or want a niche support for Kniech, she is worth getting, but if not, I would skip her. And in the fourth spot, it's Shenhe. She still works the same as she did years ago when she was released. Definitely a good option for Ayaka, Risley or Skirk freeze teams, but far from being a necessity for any of these. Once again, this does not mean that you shouldn't go for the unit you want. In the end, always get the characters you like the most, even if they are not the most meta, because it's a game and it should bring you joy. These videos are just meant as a meta F2P advice, but in the end, it's all up to you. And with that, we've reached the end of this video. What are your pulling plans? Are you going for Skirk, Mavuika, or skip altogether? Let me know in the comments down below. I will get my copy of Skirk and then hopefully make a cracked F2P freeze team with Escoffier and Farina. C0R0 of course. If you like this video, please leave a like or subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, thanks again for watching, good luck on your pulls, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!